Thank you. I'm Emily Freeman, as James introduced me. I'm a developer advocate for Kickbox. We're an email verification startup. I live in Denver, and this is my first time in Toronto, so I'm excited to be with you all. Thank you. Scaling systems is hard, but we're developers. That's kind of our thing. Scaling people, well, that's significantly harder. Humans are complicated. Broadly speaking, companies have 3 stages of development: infancy, those awkward teenage years, and if they survive the trials of adolescence, adulthood. An infant startup is so drastically different from its adult incarnation that they could be considered different companies. Each will have a different mission and a unique culture. Scaling isn't just about making what you have bigger. An ant can't be scaled to the size of an elephant. The internal structure is fundamentally different. Instead, companies have to evolve. But companies aren't living, breathing organisms. They're collections of people, families, tribes, civilizations. So how do we scale a team of 2 to 20? Well, the answer starts over 2,000 years ago in Sparta. This talk will focus on 3 distinct military organizations: Spartans, Mongols, and Romans. Sparta's standing army numbered 10,000, whereas Rome's, they maxed out at about 500,000. We'll look at the organization of each military and apply those lessons learned to our dev teams and our broader organizations. Whether you're scaling an army of soldiers or developers, a lot of it comes down to communication and collaboration. How do you keep people informed and working together toward a shared goal? If there's just a few folks, it's no big deal, pretty easy. But as your team gets bigger, more and more intersections of communication develop, and with that, more opportunities for miscommunication. Turns out there's actually a formula for this. Don't worry, if you don't like math, I'll spare it. For a team of 5, there are 10 connections. Not so bad. A team of 10 jumps to 45. A team of 15 brings us to 105 communication connections. And just doubling that team to 30 developers brings us to 435 ways people can communicate. Is anyone else totally overwhelmed? Because I feel like this adorable yet definitely melancholy pug. Before I continue, I want to acknowledge that scaling is messy, and it always will be. We don't exist in a vacuum, and there's no petri dish in which to try different approaches. Many times, due to resource constraints, we get one shot, and if we fail, well, it's over. But there are some things we can do better, as developers and as managers. So where do we start? With Sparta, our startup of the ancient world. They were small. As I said earlier, at its largest, it was about 10,000 soldiers. And Sparta was obsessed with what it did best: warfare. They also had a bit of a thing with nudity, but I digress. Most Greek city-states were fortified by a wall. Instead, Sparta chose to defend themselves with a wall of men. Pretty bold, huh? This obsession with war started on day 1. Newborns were bathed in wine. Don't worry, I don't get that part either. Taken by their fathers to the Geruza, a council of elders, for inspection. Infanticide, unfortunately, was common in most Greek city-states, and Sparta was no exception. Babies who were not deemed strong enough were abandoned to die of exposure. At age 7, boys were taken to the Agosh, a military training facility and barracks. Girls were permitted to stay at home with their parents. They were educated and encouraged to exercise, unique in the Greek city-states, so yay for kind of equal rights. Spartans eschewed all comforts. They said that they were the only people for which war was a reprieve from everyday life. Their staple diet was blood broth, exactly what it sounds like, and boys at the Agosh were regularly denied food and clothing. They were encouraged to steal, but beaten harshly if caught, not for stealing, but for being caught. Everything about the Agosh hardened the soldiers for warfare, and at age 12, they were sent out with only a red cloak and expected to survive. At age 20, soldiers joined the Syssitia, a sort of mess or club. Spartan peers and members of the mess voted to accept men into their group, and voting had to be unanimous. If a soldier had not been invited to join a syssitia by age 30, he would fail to become a citizen of Sparta and instead occupy a lower standing. Men were permitted to marry at age 20, how nice of them, but would remain in the barracks until age 30. They would continue to serve as reservists until age 60. Imagine that. All Spartans were equal to their peers and submissive to their unit. Soldiers who lost their hoplon or shield were disgraced, as the shield protected not only that man, but the man on his left. This formation is called a phalanx, invented by the Spartans, and it's a unique way of moving in close formation. Spartans were a small tribe of intensely loyal, overworked, and sometimes underfed soldiers who bravely took on the big boys of the ancient world. The Battle of Thermopylae pitted 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians, and 400 Thebans, fighting to the death against over 100,000 Persians. And isn't that how every startup would like to imagine themselves? Maybe without the core strength and rugged good looks? When you're in the startup phase, I want you to find what you do best. Spartans were the special forces of ancient Greece. They were unmatched in war. If an ally was threatened, all they had to do was send one man. A single soldier dressed in that iconic Spartan red cloak, because enemies knew that a fight with one Spartan was a fight with all of Sparta. You're too young to be worried about anything but product market fit. Find the product that resonates with people and focus on that. You can A/B test things like button colors way later. Now is not the time. Hire generalists. You need people capable of solving just about any problem. Those people may not be up to speed on the latest and greatest JavaScript framework, but they do know how to solve problems. They have a certain grit and a dogged resilience to figure it out. At this stage, specialists could hinder your progress by narrowing their focus too quickly. Keep your team agile and focused on how to solve the problem most efficiently, not how to solve the problem with a certain tool. Allow natural communication pathways to form. A desire path is a path formed by erosion caused by humans or animals walking over the same part of grass over and over and over again. My father is from the hills of rural Alabama, and before there were paved roads, semi-paved roads, there were pig trails. The natural paths pigs cut from through wilderness from point A to point B. Communication follows a similar pattern. Observe who communicates with others most seamlessly. If you need to delegate responsibility or bring something to the group, explain it to that person first and allow them to communicate it. Take on the big boys. Listen, at this point, you've got 2 developers and 3 to 6 months of runway. You've got nothing to lose. The stats say you're gonna crash and burn, so just go for it. Give it everything you've got. 300 Spartans marched right up to 100,000 Persians and challenged them to a fight. Be bold. Worst case, you learn some valuable lessons. Best case, you become the big boy. The Mongols are our analog for mid-sized teams. It's our awkward teenager of an organization. The Mongol army topped out at about 100,000. It is to this day the largest geographic empire in history. They conquered nearly all of continental Asia, the Middle East, and many parts of Eastern Europe. Honestly, Mongols didn't stand out as a people that would influence history in the way that they did. As a people, they sat quietly in the foothills of Siberia, mastering archery and horsemanship. But like most nomadic tribes who live in brutal conditions, they were tough, like real tough. The Mongols and their conquests are forever married to Genghis Khan, or Genghis Khan, depending on who you ask. Temujin, the boy who would become Genghis Khan, was born in 1162 to an unremarkable and lowly tribe. His father was poisoned when he was young, and he was left to the care of his older brothers, one of whom he murdered in a fight. As a teenager, he married Borta, his first and most influential wife. Early on in their marriage, she was kidnapped, a common practice in Mongolia at the time, and his rescue of her proved his military mettle. He eventually went on to unite the Mongol tribes, did this by instigating a civil war, and was eventually named Great Khan, ruling over all of Mongolia. Genghis was a brilliant military leader. Under his rule, Mongols conquered more land in 25 years than the Romans did in 400. He did this through a number of tactics. Mongols embraced religious tolerance. Conquered people could practice their religions freely. He promoted people on merit and brought people from lower classes into his tribe, doing away with the rich and powerful families, which made him immensely popular. Mongolian society was pretty egalitarian. Both men and women contributed, and women didn't suffer from the typical patriarchal domination, so minus the whole wife kidnapping thing. He reinvigorated the Silk Road, ensured safe passage for travelers, and enabled globalized trade. The Mongols were uncommonly adaptable. Even though they had no experience with walled cities, they mastered siege warfare. Cities were often so afraid of slaughter that they simply surrendered as soon as the Mongols showed up. Mongols definitely left their mark. They defeated nations that had 100 times the manpower, which is kind of what a mid-sized company or late-stage startup needs to do. You've got product market fit. Now it's time to build an empire. So how do we apply Genghis Khan's wisdom to our own teams? Avoid emotional decision-making. Above all else, Genghis Khan was a master strategist. In the early days, things are rocky. One day, you'll get a client who will pay this month's entire AWS bill, and the next, the site's down and investors are calling you just to scream at you. Reactionary businesses rarely survive. Start to think in an OODA loop. And if you haven't heard of that, an OODA loop was created by Colonel John Boyd of the US Air Force. It stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. This will allow you to rapidly work through problems and prevent yourself from being bogged down by fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's even better if you can get inside your competitor's OODA loop and upend their strategy. Avoid micromanagement. Mongol officers and troops were usually given significant freedom by their superiors in executing orders. As long as the larger objectives were met, Mongol soldiers could solve problems as they saw fit. In other words, they focused on what, not how. As you grow, you want to keep your team focused on a larger mission, whatever that is, but give them the room to do their job. Which brings me to enable autonomy. This isn't the first time you've heard this today. Each Mongol soldier typically maintained 3 to 4 horses on any type of campaign. Because they swapped horses frequently, they could travel at high speeds for days without stopping or exhausting their animals. They had an extraordinary ability to live off the land, and in extreme conditions, even live off their horses, maintaining themselves through mare's milk. Unlike other armies, they weren't dependent on supply logistics. Give your employees the resources they need to get the job done. Support them. And if you're in a management position, protect them from negative outside influences. If the VP of product wants a feature done yesterday, that's your problem, not your dev team's. Stay small. Much like our modern military, the Mongol army was organized into small squads that together made up larger units. Growing doesn't mean that all your developers now report to a single manager, who reports to a single VP, who reports to the CTO. We all know an organization like that. Instead, embrace those small groups, close-knit, family-like structures of people that can merge into larger groups when necessary. Start to introduce structure, but keep it simple. Don't go full-on Jira just yet and hire a Scrum Master. Instead, implement a daily stand-up. Start tracking features or bugs on a whiteboard or a very simple tracking tool. At this stage, too much communication is inefficient, and too little will result in confusion. The last thing you want is 2 developers trying to save or solve the same bug. Merge conflicts. Prevent yourself from falling into the trap of acting like a real company. Forget whatever that means in your head. I mean, pay your taxes, please. But it's probably not time for a formal review process or mandatory one-on-ones every week. Focus. It's easy at this stage to get excited about all the things. Yes, your company could become the world's best to-do list for stay-at-home parents and CEOs alike. But we're not there yet. Find your one market. A grocery list targeted at moms with young children is going to be fundamentally different than a task tracker for managers who want to keep tabs on their direct reports. Once you have the revenue and majority market share, you can start invading others. For now, stay focused. If you survive the pimply, mistake-ridden years of scaling a startup into an enterprise, congratulations, you're Rome. And let me tell you, you don't want to be the guy who caused the end of the Roman Empire. Rome is our large-scale organization. Reliability and predictability are much more critical. You're an empire now. It's more important to protect what you've built than to be a disruptor. Administration, management, and process eclipse rockstar developers and game-changing ideas. Rome was nearly an unstoppable force and one of the largest empires the world has ever seen. Its legacy continues to influence us every day via language, law, religion, architecture, government, and more. The Roman Empire spanned over 2,000 years, and its military structure is a graduate-level course in and of itself. Edward Gibbon's The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire is just short of 4,000 pages long. And that's just the decline and fall. I can't possibly do it justice in the next few minutes, but I will highlight the structure of the imperial Roman army when it reached its peak size of 450,000 in 211 AD. Emperor Augustus founded the imperial army. Prior to him, Rome motivated soldiers with grants of land and increased wealth. But as land became more scarce, they shifted toward rewarding soldiers with a set amount of denarii after their service. For the legionnaires, this was the equivalent of 13 years' salary. Kind of like a pension, right? The imperial army was split into two groups. You can think of this as commissioned officers and enlisted soldiers. The commissioned officers were assigned to legions, heavy infantry made up of 5,000 Roman citizens each. Long-term professional soldiers served 25-year terms, and conscription was decreed only in emergencies. In addition to the legions, the auxilia was established. These enlisted troops were recruited from the peregrini, non-citizen residents. The auxilia supplied infantry, cavalry, archers, and special forces. Auxiliaries were awarded Roman citizenship after they had completed their 25-year commitment. The army also employed numeri, mercenaries from allied people outside of the empire, kind of like contractors. Legionnaires enjoyed greater social status, higher pay, and better equipment than the non-citizen auxiliaries. Organizationally, every province had a legati, the legion commanders, who reported to the provincial governor. Governors reported directly to the Emperor of Rome, and the commander of the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal guard, acted as the de facto military chief of staff. While the legionnaires held a higher status, they depended heavily on the auxilia. Legions were entirely heavy infantry, foot soldiers in metal armor. They were almost unbeatable by other infantry, but could not campaign independently, just like developers would be stranded without teams like DevOps and QA. So what can we glean from Rome? Break into small teams. We do the same thing with our applications. When a class gets too big, we abstract logic away into a smaller component. The same principle applies to people. But allow these divisions to form naturally. Each unit in Rome had its own standard, which is a pole with a variety of decorations. The practical use was to visually communicate to a soldier where the bulk of his unit was on the battlefield. But these standards held deep meaning. Soldiers believed their standards represented the divine spirit and often prayed before a battle. They represented the soul of the unit and brought everyone together, similar to how a country's flag does for its citizens. Set a clear vision. Think of the small teams you just formed as little Spartas. Go back to those fundamentals and allow each team autonomy. But be clear about the broader vision. Teams without a focused goal will naturally prioritize the things they're interested in, not the things that are best for the company. Leadership must regularly communicate the direction the larger organization is headed and why. The why is even more important than the what, because it lends context and clarity. And be careful about how many times you move the cheese. It's okay to pivot if the future of the company depends on it. But changing priorities every quarter will undermine your credibility and the organization. When your word means nothing, people stop listening. Become masters of logistics and planning. When you're big, logistics matter. Romans invested heavily in an extensive and well-maintained road system. This allowed their troops to move relatively rapidly as needed. In addition, the Roman military dedicated a specialized branch to logistics and transportation. Smaller armies could forage, purchase, or steal food, but the Roman forces were too large. Instead, deployed forces were regularly resupplied through a massive network of supply chains. For modern development teams, this is akin to project management. Agile, Scrum, extreme programming, Kanban, it doesn't really matter. Choose one, and then commit to it. And if you choose Agile, do Agile. Not your snowflake, the product team just wants to add this one thing this week form of Agile. The more logistical thinking you can remove from a developer's plate means the more time she has to do what she does best, engineer solutions. Invest in your employees. Take care of them. This means encouraging work-life balance. And if you don't know where to start with that, start by not allowing your employees to work more than 40 hours a week. And you may be thinking, but, this deploy really needs to go out. Why? Is it because you set an unrealistic expectation with customers, or because the calendar says it's going to be deployed? Emergencies happen. We're developers. We know that when the site's down, we can't just go home for dinner. We get it. But those situations are few and far between. Working around the clock and checking email at home does not make your employees hard workers. It makes them former employees. The Roman army had a vested interest in the health and well-being of their soldiers. They developed sophisticated medical knowledge and practices, and for good reason. A sick soldier cannot be relied on to campaign or defend a city. Offering generous insurance is important. So is having conversations about mental health and burnout. Anxiety and depression affect so many of us sitting in this room. And we struggle on a regular, if not daily basis with those mental health issues. Engineering can be lonely, grueling work. You sit alone for hours, typing new commands into a computer that just sits there and prints out errors at you, literally yelling at you for not coding well enough. Simply recognizing how hard your team works, acknowledging that everyone needs breaks, and promoting frequent, work-free vacations will do wonders for the longevity of your team. Introduce specialists, or allow your generalists to become specialists. As teams form, sit down with each employee and discuss their interests and goals, both professionally and personally. Some of the generalists may express interest in management. Many will not. Allocating team members may feel rather arbitrary at first, but if you allow some flexibility in movement between teams, each person will slowly find his or her niche. As you specialize, now would be an ideal time to begin strangling the monolith, if you haven't already. APIs and microservices can aid small teams in working autonomously without stepping on the feet of other teams. Allow teams to own endpoints and services, and they'll begin to specialize even further. Because services can only be accessed via an endpoint, it's completely acceptable for one service to be written in Go and another for Ruby. Allowing your developers to explore and experiment will encourage them to think creatively and keep your company having an edge over your competitors. Finally, have honest conversations, no matter your size. Conflict is uncomfortable, I get it, but it's an absolute requirement for scaling a dev team, and honestly, for being a good human being. I thrive in an environment of a late-stage startup. I don't have the risk tolerance for the early days when it's super touch and go, and I'm enough of an entrepreneur that I don't do well, constrained by the strict rules many corporations run by. I know that. I know that I need some runway to feel comfortable and enough flexibility and autonomy that the company benefits from my unique skill set. People that thrive when there are two developers and endless pots of coffee may not transition well as the company advances and grows. That's okay. Watching good employees move on, it's hard. It's emotionally taxing. And who wants to go through the headache of hiring someone new? But it's best for everyone involved. Unhappy employees can quickly become poison for teams, bringing everyone down. An honest conversation, even an uncomfortable one, is the best way to make sure each person on your team feels content and satisfied, fulfilled by their work. Some of the advice in this talk applies to you. Some may not. You know your team best. Follow your instincts, but be careful how much your emotions get in the way of your judgment. Collect data whenever you can. It will keep you focused and inform decisions as you grow and move forward. Trust your employees. Grant them the freedom to do what they do best, solve problems. Hire people that are happy, truthful, communicative, and talented. And above all else, serve as an example of someone who is fair, focused, and enthusiastic. No one wants to work for someone who isn't willing to roll up their sleeves and dive in when it's needed. Thank you.